A girl sits near me on the airtrain wearing a beautiful full-skirted gown, but she doesn't look happy. The confused expression on her face mirrors the way I feel. I know I'm coming home from work, but why so late? My mind is foggy and very tired. I'm nervous, on edge. Something feels the way it did in the burrow the morning they took Kai away. There is a sharpness in the air, an echo of a scream on the wind. "Did you get matched tonight?" I asked the girl. The moment the words came out of my mouth, I think, what a stupid question. Of course she did. There's no other occasion besides the banquet where someone would wear a dress like this. Her dress is yellow, the same color my friend M wore for her banquet back home. The girl looks at me, her expression uncertain, and then she glances down at her hands to see if the answer is there. It is, in the form of a little silver box. "Yes," she says, her eyes lighting up. "Of course." "You couldn't have the banquet at Central Hall," I say to the girl, remembering something else, "because it's being renovated." "That's right," she said, and her father turns to look at me, an expression of concern on his face. "So where did you have it?" I ask. She doesn't answer me. She snaps the silver box open and shut. "It all happened so fast," she says. "I'm going to have to look at the microcard again when I get home." I smile at her. "I remember that feeling," I say. And I do. I remember. Oh no. I slip my hand inside my sleeve, and I feel a tiny scrap of paper there. One that's too small to be a poem. I don't dare take it out on the air train, for in front of so many eyes. But I think I know what happened. Back in the burrow, when the rest of my family took the tablet, I didn't. They all seemed like I do now, confused, but not completely at sea. They knew who they were and understood most of what they were doing. The air train slides to a stop. The girl and her family gets off, and at that last moment I stand up and slip through the door. This isn't my station, but I can't sit any longer. The air in the central feels more moist and cold. It's not quite dark yet, but I see a hook of moon tipped into the dark blue water of the evening sky. Breathing deeply, I walk down to the bottom of the metal steps and stand off to the side, letting the others pass. I pull out the slip of paper from my sleeve, hiding my hands for their movements in the shadows under the stars the best I can. The paper says, "Remember, I've taken the red tablet, and it worked. I'm not immune." And some part of me, some hope and belief in what I am, dissolves and disappears. "No," I whisper. "This can't be true. I am immune. I have to be." Deep down, I believed in my immunity. I thought I would be like Kai and Xander and Indy. After all, I have conquered the other two tablets. I walked through the blue tablet in the carving, even though it was supposed to have stopped me cold. And I had never once taken the green. The sorting part of my mind tells me, "You were wrong. You are not immune. Now you know." If I'm not immune, then what have I forgotten? Lost forever. My mouth tastes like tears. I run my tongue over my teeth, feeling to see if there's any trace of the tablet left. Calm down. Think of what I remember. Most recent memory before the air train is of leaving the sorting center. But why was I there so late? I shift and feel something under my plainclothes, something besides the poems. The red dress. I'm wearing it. Why? Because Kai is coming tonight. I remember that. Put my hand over my pounding heart and I feel the whisper of paper underneath. And I remember that I have poems to trade and that I carry them next to my skin. I know how these papers came to me back when I first got here. I remember it perfectly. A few days after my arrival in Central, I walked along the edge of the white barrier circling the still zone. For a moment I pretend that I was back in the carving, that the barrier was one of the canyon walls, and that the windows that lined the apartment buildings all the way up to where the caves in the outer Providence. Crevices in the stone of the canyon where people could hide loot and paint. But I realized as I walked, the outside surfaces of the apartments are so slick and same that even Indy couldn't find a hold of the wall. The lawns on the green spaces were covered in snow, and the air felt like it did back in Oria in winter, thick and cold. The fountain in the middle of one of the green spaces had a marble spire balancing on a pedestal. A cypress fountain, I thought. I told myself I need to be gone by spring, by the time the water runs over it again. I thought about Eli. This is his city, where he came from. I wonder if he feels about it the way I do about Oria, that in spite of it all that has happened, it's still home. I remember watching Eli go towards the mountains with Hunter, the two of them hoping to find the farmers who had avoided society for so long. I wonder if the barricade was up where he lived when he lived here. I missed him almost as much as I missed Bram. The branches above me were dried, dead, and the figures unleaved and bare. I reached up and snapped one down. I listened for something, for some sound of life in the quiet circle, but there was no sound. Redly beyond the ones that can't be stilled, like the wind in trees. But I realized that told me nothing. In society, we don't call out beyond our own bodies and the walls in our rooms. When we scream, it's only in the world of our own dreams, and I have never been sure who hears. I glance over to make sure that no one is watching, and then I bent down in the snow near the wall and I wrote an E for Eli's name. When I finished, I wanted more. These branches will be my bones, I thought, and the paper will be my heart and skin, and the places that feel everything. I broke the branches into more pieces, shin bones, thigh bones, arm bones. There had to be all in segments so that they would move when I did. I slid them up into my legs and into my plain clothes, down into my sleeves, and then I stood up to move. It's a strange feeling, I thought, like my bones are walking along with me on the outside of my body. "You see a raise?" someone said behind me. I turned around surprised. A woman looks back at me, her features unremarkable. She wore a standard issue gray coat, like mine, and her hair and eyes were brown or gray. It was hard to say. She looked cold. I couldn't tell how long she'd been watching me. "I have something that belongs to you," she says. It was sent in from the outer providence. I didn't answer. Kaya taught me that sometimes silence was best. "I cannot guarantee your safety," the woman said. "I can only guarantee the authenticity of the items. But if you come with me, I'll take you to them." She stood up and began walking. In a moment she would be out of sight, so I followed her. When she heard me coming, she slowed down and let me catch up. We walked, not speaking, along streets and past buildings beyond the edge of the pools of light from the street lamps, and then to the snarled wire fence enclosed in the enormous gray fields, pitted with rubble, ghostly white plastics covering the grounds below that breathed in and out in a passing breeze. She ducked through the gap in the fence, and I did too. "Stay close," she said. This field is an old restoration site. There are holes everywhere. As I followed her, I realized with excitement where I must be going. To the octopus' real hiding place. Not the museum where they did the superficial surface trading. I was going to be the place where the octopus must store things, where they themselves went to exchange homes and papers, and information, and who knows what else. As I skidded the holes in the ground and listened to the wind rustle in the plastic coverings, I knew that I should be afraid, and somewhere deep inside I was. "I was going to have to wear this," the woman said once. "You're going to have to wear this," the woman said once we were in the middle of the field. She pulled out a dark piece of fabric. "I need to tie it over your eyes. I cannot guarantee your safety." "All right," I say, and I turned my back to her. When she had finished tying the cloth, she held me by the shoulders. "I'm going to spin you around," she said. A little laugh escaped me, and I couldn't help it. like a game from first school, I said, remembering when we covered our eyes with our hands and played children's games in the lawns of the burrow during the leisure hours. A little bit like that, she agreed. And then she spun me, and the world whirled around me in dark and chilled, whispering. I thought of Kai's compass then, with an arrow that could always tell you north, no matter how often you turned. I felt a familiar sharp pain that I'd often always had when I thought of the compass, and how I traded his gift away. You're very trusting, she says. I didn't answer. Back in Oria, Kai had told me that arctivists were no better or worse than anyone else, so I wasn't certain I could trust her. But I felt that I could take a risk. She held my arm, and we walked with her, lifting my feet awkwardly, trying not to step on anything. The ground felt cold and hard under my feet, but every now and then I felt it give of grass or something that had once been growing. She stopped, and I heard a rasp of her pulling something away. Plastic, I thought. The white sheeting covering the remains of the buildings. It's underground, she says. We'll have to go down a set of stairs, and we'll reach the long hallway. Go very slowly. I waited, but she didn't move. You first, she said. Put my hands up on the walls, which were close and tight. I felt old bricks covering in moss. I scuffed my foot forward and took a step down. How will I know when I've reached the end? I asked her, and the words, in the way I used them, made me think of the poem and the carving. The ones I loved the best are those I found in the farmer's library cave. The one that always seemed to speak to my journey to Kai. I did not reach thee, but my feet slipped near every day. 3 rivers and a hill to cross, 1 desert and a sea. I shall not count the journey one when I am telling thee. When I reached the last step, my foot slipped just like in the poem. Keep going, she said behind me. Use the walls to guide you. I dragged my right hand along the bricks, while dirt crumpled along my fingers. And after a time I felt the walls open up to space in the large room behind. My feet echoed along the ground, and I heard different sounds, feet shifting, people breathing. I knew we were not alone. This way, the woman said. She took my arm to guide me. We moved away from the sounds of others. Stop, said the woman. When I take off the blindfold, she told me, you'll see the items that someone arranged to be delivered to you. You may notice that several are missing. They were the payment for delivery, agreed upon by the sender. All right, I said. Take your time to look things over, she says. Someone will come back to escort you out. It took me a moment when I was disoriented and the place underground was dim to understand what I was seeing. After moments I realized that I was walled in by 2 rows of long empty metal shelves. They looked slick and clean, as if someone cared for them and smoothed away the dust. But even so, they reminded me of the cryptic tombs we saw once we were in the 100 history lessons, where they were little caves full of bones and people carved in stone on tops of boxes. So much death, the society told us, with no chance of life afterwards. There were no tissue preservation then. In the middle of the shelf in front of me was a large packet wrapped in thick plastic. When I pulled back the top edge of the plastic, I found paper, the pages I brought out of the carving. The smell of water and dust sandstone seemed to come up with the paper. Kai, he managed to send me these. I put my hand flat on the papers, breathing in, holding on. He touched these too. In my mind, the stream ran and the snow fell, and we said goodbye on the bank. I took to the water, and he ran alongside it, bringing these words the length of the river. I turned through the papers, looking at the edge of the pages, and in the cold metal aisles alone. I want him. I want his hands at my back, his lips speaking poems on mine. And our journey to each other to be completed. The miles between us consumed and all distance closed. I appeared at the end of the shelves. I held the papers against my chest and backed up a few steps. "Is everything all right?" someone asked, and I realized it was the same woman who had brought me. She came closer, the yellow-white circle of her flashlight directed down at my feet and not at my face to blind me. "Have you had enough time to look? Everything appears to be here," I say, "except for 3 poems, which I assume are the price you mentioned for the trade." "Yes," she said. "If that's all you needed, you can go. Come out of the shelves and cross the room. There is only one door to take the stairs back out. No blindfold this time, but then I know where we are," I say. "I'll know how to come back." She smiles. "Exactly." Her gaze lingers on the papers. "You can trade here if you like. No need to go to the museum with a cash like that." "Would I be an archivist then?" I ask. "No," she says. "You'd be a trader." For a moment I thought she said trader, which of course I was to society. But then she went on, "Archivists work with traders. But archivists are different. We had specific training. We can recognize forgeries that the average trader would never notice." She paused, and then I nodded to show I understood the importance of what she was saying. "But if you bargain with a trader alone, you have no guarantee of authenticity. Archivists are the only ones with adequate knowledge of resources to ascertain whether or not information articles are genuine. Some say the fraction of the archivist is older than the society." She glanced back at the pages in my hands and then back to me. "Sometimes trade comes through with items worth nothing," she says. "Your papers, for example. You can trade them one at a time if you like, but they will have more value as a group. The larger the collection, the higher the price you can get. And if we see potential in you, you may be allowed to broker other trades on behalf of the collected part of the fee." "Thank you," I say. Then, thinking of the words of the Thomas poem, which Kai had always taught I might be able to trade, I asked, "What about the poem that are remembered?" "You mean poems that no paper document to back them up?" she says. "Yes. There was a time when we would accept those, though the value was less," she said. "But it's no longer the case. I should have assumed as much, from the way the archivists in Tanya rejected when I tried to trade with the Tennyson poem. But I thought that was the Thomas poem, unknown to anyone except Kai and me. Might have been the exception. Still, I had the wealth of possibility thanks to Kai." "You can store your items here," the archivist says. "The fee is minimal." Instinctively, I drew back. "No," I tell her. "I'll find somewhere else." She raised an eyebrow at me. "Are you certain you have a secure place?" she asked. I thought of the cave where the pages had been safe for so long, and the compact where grandfather had kept the first poems hidden for years. And I knew where I hide my papers. I burned words and I buried them, I thought, but I haven't tried the water yet. In a way, I think it was Indy who gave me the idea of where to hide papers. She always talked about the ocean, and even more than that, she might have been her odd, oblique manner of thinking. The way she looked at things sideways, upside down, instead of straight on, seeing truth from unexpected and awkward angles. "I want to trade for something right away. Tonight," I told the archivist. She looked disappointed, as though I were a child who was about to spend all these fragile, beautiful words for something shiny and false. "What do you need?" she asked. "A box," I say. "One that fire can burn, that won't let in water or air or earth. Can you find something like that?" Her face changed a little, became more approving. "Of course," she says. "Wait here. It won't take me long." She vanished along the shelves. That was our first trade. Later, I discovered the woman's identity and learned that she was the head archivist of Central City. The person who oversees directs the trades but doesn't often execute them herself. But from the beginning, she's taken a special interest in the pages Kai sent me. I've worked with her ever since. When I climbed out from the underground that night, clutching a box full of papers in my chilled hands, I paused for a moment at the edge of the field. It was silver grass and gray and black rubble. I could make out the shape of the white plastic that covered over the excavation, protecting them from the restoration interruption and not yet resumed. I wonder what this place used to be and why the society decided to abandon any attempts of bringing it back. And then what happened next, I asked myself. Where did I put the pages after I took them from the archivist's hiding place? For a moment, the memory tries to slip away like a silvered fish in the stream, but I catch hold of it. I hid the papers in the lake. Even though they told us the lake was dead, I dared to go into and bring because I saw the sign of life. The bank looked like a healthy streams in the carving, not the one where Vic was poisoned. I could see where the grass had been in the place where the spring had come and water was warm. Even saw fish moving slowly, spending the winter deep below. I crept out through the brush and went up to the edge of the lake, and then I buried the box under the middle pier, where under the water stones and patterns and shallow parts where the lake touched the shore. And then a newer memory comes back. The lake. That's where Kai said he's meeting me. Once I reached the lake, I switched on the flashlight and keep hidden in the brush at the edge of the city, where the street runs out and the marsh takes over. I don't think he's here yet. There's always a moment of panic when I come back. Will the papers be gone? But then I take a deep breath and put my hands into the water and move away the rocks and left out the dripping box filled with poetry, where I traded the pages, it usually to pay for exchange a message between Kai and me. I don't know how many of those of whose hands the notes will go through before they get to Kai. So I send my first message in code I created, only that I invented during the long hours of sorts that didn't require my full attention. Kai figured out the code and changed it back slightly when he wrote me back. Each time we built upon the original code, little changing and evolving to make it harder to read. It's not a perfect system, but I'm sure the code can be broken. But it's the best we can do. The closer I get to the water, the more I realize something's wrong. A thick cluster of black birds had gathered out near the edge of the first dock. Another group of them is conjugated further down the shore. I cry and call to each other, picking at some things on the ground. I shine my flashlight at them. Blackbirds scattered and screeched at me, and I stopped short. Dead fish lap along the banks, catching the reeds belly up, glazed eyes. And I remember what Kai said about Vic and the way he died. I remember the dark poison stream back out in the outer provinces and the other rivers that had society of poison and water run down from to the enemy, who poisoned the society's water. I shiver a little and wrap my arms more tightly around myself. The papers inside my clothes whisper. Underneath this dead somewhere in the water, other papers lie buried. In early spring, but the water is still frigid. If I go in and get the pages now, I won't be able to wait as long for Kai. What if he comes and I've gone home cold?